Well, apologies that it's taken me so long to get round to doing this video. Just one of those things, life and work often gets in the way. But looking back on Italy and Wales's Six Nations campaign, I've done videos in this series already for Ireland and France, and then for England and Scotland. And now it is time for Italy and Wales, the bottom two in the 2024 Men's Six Nations. But certainly from an Italian point of view, that doesn't exactly tell the full story. So welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you clicking on the video. Comment down below, what do you make of both of these teams? What did you make of their Six Nations? And I suppose in particular, now that we're a good week or so since the end of the Six Nations, where do you see them heading in the future? Off the back of this Six Nations, the direction of travel for these teams appears, on the surface at least, to be very, very different. So do drop a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, but let's kick things off with the Italians. What is there to say really, other than the fact that the 2024 Six Nations was an overwhelming, resounding, categorical success? And it's brilliant that that was the case. Their best ever performance in a Six Nations, even though it wasn't their highest ever finish, but in terms of 2 wins and a draw, that draw they'll feel should have been a win as well. They'll look back at playing England on the opening weekend and feel that was a game that maybe they could have, should have won as well. This is an Italian team heading in an upwards trajectory. And to a degree, I owe Italy a little bit of an apology, because before the Six Nations, I was looking back at the World Cup. I was looking back at not just 2 heavy defeats against the All Blacks and against France, but 2 games where they looked miles off it, confidence looked shot, they got completely blitzed physically, and 2 teams with great attacking players tore them to shreds. So I looked at Italy and I thought, well, all right, let's say they're going to be better from the World Cup. I couldn't see them being so much better that they would end up achieving what they have achieved. So I hold my hands up there. I obviously underestimated the Italians following that World Cup. But the most pleasing thing actually, and I think even a lot of Wales fans would be able to appreciate the importance of Italy being a good competitive team for Northern Hemisphere rugby, for the Six Nations Championship, and for the complexion of global rugby as a whole. One of the most pleasing things about this Six Nations title is the question of, is this something that they can truly kick on from? Because in previous Six Nations, Italy might have got a win, or they might have got even a couple of wins, but you never felt like they had the real building blocks in place for that to be the same year on year. And it's always going to be difficult if you compare the amount of players they have to pick from, if you compare the resources they have compared with other unions, they're always on the back foot from that regard. But I think in terms of the talent of the player pool coming through, in terms of what has been spoken about a lot with Benetton going well in the URC, even Zebre have picked up a win this year, and they were usually the whipping boys of that competition. Gonzalo Quesada coming in, and I'll get onto him in just a second, and adapting that game plan. You just feel like maybe the building blocks are in place for this to be an Italian setup that can be consistently competitive and pick up wins every single year, rather than, more often than not, picking up the wooden spoon, and more often than not, losing all of their games. And you look at the team, and I think it's such an exciting team as well, whether it's Menoncello, who's got a huge amount of plaudits. I think he's better as a centre than on the wing, by the way. I know he shifted to wing for at least one of the games. I like seeing him in the centres more. You look at Lewis Liner, you look at Paolo Garbisi, Ange Capuozzo, who had a quieter Six Nations from his previous standards, but there's loads of exciting young players in the team, and that's just the back line. Lamaro in the back row, Negri and the heft that he adds in the back row. Nicotera, actually, at hooker, I'm always really impressed by, particularly I think for some of the stuff he does around the park. There are all of a sudden players of real quality, I think, throughout this Italian team, and that is hugely, hugely exciting. But I mentioned the coach, Gonzalo Quesada, and he's just done a great job. He's done a great job of, I think, stripping back the game plan a little bit, just tweaking it and adapting it, rather than the Italian team that would run more than anyone else, and that would often get them into trouble. Being a little bit smarter, kicking a little bit more, having a game plan that I think can put more pressure on the opposition has been outstanding. So from Italy, this is a question for you. Out of all the teams in the Six Nations, compared with where expectations were at the start of the championship to where they ended up at the end, have Italy had the most successful Six Nations? Obviously not in the wins and losses column, but based upon expectations, I think there's a pretty good argument that the Italians have. And on the flip side, of Italy and their success is Wales. First wooden spoon since 2003, losing all of their games, a real low ebb for the game. And it's a real sad state of affairs with Wales. I don't take any pleasure in it whatsoever. Like, you know, sometimes with the rivalries as they are, there will be, not many actually, but some English voices that might be kind of looking over the River Severn and somewhat amused at the situation Wales find themselves in the same way that I haven't enjoyed at all the dip off from the Wallabies. I don't enjoy it now with Wales at all. But one of the things that I really want to speak about with Wales is Warren Gatland. A lot of the reaction I've seen to them getting the wooden spoon was his comments in the press conference, where he came out and said, yeah, to the WRU CEO, I've just offered my resignation. They've rejected it. They've said that's the last thing that they want. And a lot of people criticising Gatland for that, for airing what should be a private conversation and for probably airing quite quickly after the full-time whistle a conversation and a decision that needs more level-headed thinking rather than the emotion of another defeat and the nature of that performance against Italy as well. I think Warren Gatland has probably done that deliberately. He is a very smart coach that has been around the block for a long time, and I think it's to distract from the players, personally. I think it's that old classic football coach thing, to distract from the negativity towards the players and knocking the players anymore, give them a headline somewhere else, put the attention onto him. That to me seems like the most logical reason for why he did that. I think he was probably aware of some of the criticism that he would come his way, but there were reasons that he did that ultimately. I just wanted to say that because I feel like that, broadly speaking, got missed. I saw a lot of criticism for Gatland, and in my view, it seemed quite obvious for why he might be doing that. But anyway, let's get on to Wales, because there is no getting away from the fact that it was a bleak end to the Six Nations. And I am still in the camp that I can understand what Warren Gatland says when he thinks Wales have displayed some green shoots in this Six Nations for why they could be a good team in a few years' time. When you look at the performance against England at Twickenham, when you look at the second half against Scotland, but that defeat to Italy was so poor. In particular, that first half, they were blown away. They looked a million miles off it, and it looked like a team that actually were quite lost. And we know they're a young team. There's a lot of players that are having to learn international rugby on the job. They don't have the experience in the dressing room to be able to lean on. And I think we saw that in that match against the Italians on the final weekend. But not just the performance of the team, and Welsh fans will know this as well as anyone, that the question marks for Wales is about the sport as a whole in the country. From the grassroots to the regions who have been underfunded, the whole academy structure. I see Sam Warburton has spoken about it and saying the WRU needs to forget about funding the grassroots. They need to focus on funding the elite level of the game, and then that hopefully will trickle down and inspire kids to take up the sport. I think a whole other cultural part of this for Wales as well is the rise in the popularity of the football team, in that all of a sudden the men's football team has been a side that in recent memory has got to a number of major tournaments. As I'm recording this video on Tuesday, they have a playoff against Poland tonight to potentially try and get to the Euros later this year. The rise of the popularity of the football team, as brilliant as that is for football and sport in Wales to a degree, I just wonder whether that is also to the detriment of the sport of rugby in the country as well. Wales fans, I'll be really interested on your thoughts on that, because you'll have a better understanding than me if you're living in the country, if you're more tapped into the kind of cultural sporting landscape. But from afar, from an outside view, that seems to me to be a point that is worth mentioning. So where are this Wales team and where are they going? I'm really intrigued by their tour to Australia later this year, by the way, particularly with the Wallabies with Joe Schmidt, and they've been really poor off the back of a dreadful World Cup. Where are Australia going to be? I think as a tour, that could be quite fascinating between two teams that are looking to get back to their very best. So I like the fact that that's their tour. I mean, imagine if Wales had a tour to South Africa or New Zealand or somewhere like that. It could be absolutely awful, but I feel like that is a tour that they can start to build from. I still like some of the young players. Jack Morgan, Dowie Lake coming back into the team. They've been a big miss. Rio Dyer, I think, is continuing to improve as an international winger. I'd like to see Mason Grady more. Is it time for Mason Grady to just be that inside centre, for them to play him there, to start him there, rather than coming off the bench and being a winger or an outside centre? Does he play 12? Is he the new kind of Jamie Roberts-like position for this Wales team. So there's development there. I think there are young players there that are exciting, but is there the quality? Is there the experience? Does Gatland have that kind of golden generation that he had previously of the Justin Tippericks and George North and Roberts and Halfpenny and all those players that came through, and he could really rely on them for Wales to punch above their weight really in his first stint in charge? You don't feel like that is immediately the case. How long is this going to take for Wales to get itself, the sport of rugby in Wales, to get itself back on its feet? And it's not just down to Warren Gatland. There are a whole lot of other people who have some big and important decisions to make and need to make the right decisions in terms of the structures and the regions and all that sort of thing. But I do think they've got good players there. I just think it's going to be a long, long road to recovery. So those are my general views. Italy and Wales following the 2024 Men's Six Nations. Comment down below. Let me know what you make of those two teams as they head into the future. And also, if you've got this far in the video, hit thumbs up on it. If you just like it, it gives it a boost. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel as well. Would massively appreciate it. But I'll see you in the next one.